All right, so I'm going to do a little series where I answer some Q&A, some frequently asked questions, and give you some response so you can better prepare for your process. And although this is generally geared towards police, because that is my background, a lot of the translation will carry over into other work groups, such as firefighting, other public sector jobs, because a lot of the formats tend to be the same. All right, the first question is, how do you prepare for the written exam? And little coincidence, I was looking at a testing manual for a totally different industry. I won't get into bore you with the details, but it is public sector and it's something that caught my eye in the library. And I was like, you know what? I wonder what the test prep for this book is. And I grabbed it from the library. So, like a huge nerd, that's what I did. And you actually get to benefit from the logic today. So, some of the prongs here, I'm going to pull it up here because I just took some snapshots on my phone. It went through test taking strategies. And I promise you, these are not specific to that industry. They're also not specific to police industry or fire, but they are general that will help you out and they'll be applicable to so many types, especially when you're thinking about standardized testing, which is the majority of what type of testing you will encounter. So here we go. Number one is predicting the answer, right? So when you're reading this question, before you read the responses, ask yourself, what do I think the answer is, or what do I think it's along the lines of? And then when you do actually answer the question, you can generally select a couple that make more sense and a couple that are just way off. So solid tip there. Number two, reading the whole question. Okay, so that's one of my biggest pet peeves from when I was taking tests as an officer or a prospective officer, I should say, but also in academy, but also in grade school, also promoting for sergeant. When there's a bunch of people in a room and someone gets up and they're first done clearly with like half the time used and they're basically out the door, you can generally tell that they are just so uncomfortable with the test taking process. That's a flight response. They want out of there. And I'm not going to make a personal judgment about that, but I will say that that is a missed opportunity because they're rushing. And if you read the whole question and you read it carefully, you will slow things down. You will probably not be as apt to rush. So read the whole question. And also, the add on tip, use your time wisely. You know, if you have an hour to take the test, what are you going to benefit from leaving 20 minutes early? Right. So read the whole question. That way you will see all parts of it. Number three is looking for the wrong answers. Okay, so a lot of times when you read all the responses, something will stick out. It will glare. It will, especially when you read the whole question, it'll not make sense, right? So you can quickly rule those out by looking for the wrong answers. Don't overanalyze. This is a personal struggle from my upbringing. I'm a very analytical person. It can do what's called paralysis by analysis. So to avoid that, after you read it, be precise and be consistent. After you read it, take it as it presents, right? Take it at face value. Don't think, oh, I wonder if they meant this or that, or should I read it this different way? You're going to get yourself tripped up. So just read face value and look at the words on them. Don't try to create something that's not there. All right, the next one is no need for panic. Okay, so this kind of gets to that test anxiety that a lot of people experience. However, if you think about it this way, tests are stressful. They're not supposed to be fun. So if you're stressed, it's fine. It's not going to hurt you. It's something that is definitely surmountable. And think about it this way also. If you're doing this high stress job, this is simply a test. So the quicker you can get over things and through things like this, the better apt you'll be to do this job, this type of profession that you so badly want to do. So just take it easy, use your time, breathe, all that. Number six is confusing answer choices. Okay, so sometimes the answers will be so complicated, right? And so that goes back to making sure you read it thoroughly, you pace yourself, but sometimes the confusing answers are meant to trip you up, right? So if something is very complicated in response, try to break it down to what the answer is saying. And you'll probably, if you have a beat, you'll probably recognize that there's a contradiction in there, or they're trying to throw you off with certain language, or basically, even though it's long, it might be the actual answer. Again, you got to weigh it against the other ones and make an informed decision. Number seven is your first instinct. So I remember hearing this a long time ago, back when I was in grade school, but it's that notion kind of going with the paralysis analysis, right? Not over analyzing. If you know the material well, if you've read it carefully, a lot of times your gut instinct on what the answer is could be correct, right? It might be drawing on the information you did absorb, but the way it's worded and you're reading all these other answers that sound really close, it could be throwing you off. So, when in doubt, that is a valid thing to think about. Where's your gut? And listen to it, right? There's a reason why we're programmed that way. Keywords. Okay, so when you are getting distracted by these long answers, long questions, look for the key words, and those can really help you those can really help you identify like what the question is asking, what the differences in the answers are, so that you can best assess. All right, subtle negatives. So this is where the specific verbiage is important. There's little things like the word not or except. Think about if you read the response and you don't isolate those items, then you're going to gloss over it. You might be answering in your head the opposite of what the written answer is. So pay attention to that. Again, read thoroughly. And I'll just even throw this in there. Another tip: when you have time, because you pace yourself and you're not rushing out of there, make sure you go back and reread your responses, right? Take a deep breath. If you have water, you're allowed to get up for water or whatever. Take a deep breath and go back through it. Make sure you read that all thoroughly again, because your eyes might have glanced over it too quickly the first time. Reading every answer choice. Okay, so again, that is being thorough. When you read every answer choice, you don't just pick the pretty good, sounds right answer that's A. Maybe by the time you get down to C or D, you recognize one is way better fleshed out, one is way more accurate of an answer. Spotting the hedges. So I like how they describe this one. This is focusing and recognizing words like almost, most, some, and sometimes. Because when you throw those things in there, they totally change the meaning of the sentence or the response, right? So just like a lot of cops will say, beware of always and never, those are absolutes. Those words, as well as kind of the medium, like most of the time, sometimes, that can change the response. It means it's not the absolute. So maybe you do want the answer that's like hard line, this is the answer. So if there's another option that says that and an option that says, well, most of the time, then you know the difference and you can key in on that. Long answers. So this kind of relates to one we talked about, but by reading the whole thing, some of these answers are designed to throw you off. And so they're long and confounded and they can deter you. However, sometimes those long answers will actually have all of the details broken down in a very specific way to get to the true answer, right? So it doesn't mean the long answers are correct. It doesn't mean they're incorrect. It just means it is a test strategy to make it more difficult, because what is a test for? It's for separating those that know the material and those that don't, right? So if you read the long answer in detail and you can break down the different elements of that, that's your best way to success. Restating to understand. So like a long answer, that could get you super jumbled up. But if you read it and then you, in your head, restate what the thing is saying, then that can get you closer to the true question and the true answer. Right? True statement. So this one breaks it down like this. Sometimes the answer choice is true in itself, but it doesn't answer the question being asked. So again, that's throwing you off. Option B might say, the sky is blue. Yes, it's true, but if the question wasn't asking that, then clearly it's not the correct answer. It's a true statement, but it's not the correct answer. And number 15, no patterns. So this is basically a way of saying, hey, like you might have heard somewhere that it's cool to do ABC, ABC, ABC. Chances are it's probably not a thing. However, if you start feeling a pattern, don't let that mess with your psyche, right? Don't let it get in your head and you start changing answers to not have a pattern. So those are the 15 tips. Again, I found them in a totally different resource as I was browsing the library. However, I will say those are very applicable to just test taking etiquette, test taking tips, which are very helpful. And I threw a couple others in there, right? Like taking your full time, making sure you don't rush, reading it all clearly, carefully, and double checking. One more I like to do from back in the day, from the school days, is if you don't know, if you're super stumped, rather than waste all this time on the question, just put a little mark next to it. Usually, if you have like a little pencil or a pen, you shouldn't throw off the Scantron, but do it in a way that you can recognize you need to go back there. But don't waste all your time trying to, pick apart one or two questions. Just move on and return back to it. All right. I hope that was all helpful. Again, this is a series just getting at the root of where a lot of us started. Um, we are doing a better job setting up people for success in the profession, and this is just an extension of that. So, if you want more information, there's tons and tons of free information at my podcast, Blue Grit Radio, as well as on my website, bluegritwellness.com. That's where you can subscribe to the free newsletter for all kinds of stuff and check out the shop.